Uh, I'm going to go through these slides quickly describing the requirements for Mathcad to ProE integration, and then I'm going to give two small demos. The first one would be how to go from Mathcad to ProE or ProE to Mathcad, since it is it's a bidirectional integration. Also, the second one would be avoiding double regeneration, which happens when you try to update your models after changing values from Mathcad. So I'm going to be showing those two demonstrations. To start off, basic requirements for Pro Engineer Wildfire. You need 3 MO30 or later. Recommended is MO90. You can check the version of your Pro Engineer by going to the help on the menu, clicking the About Pro Engineer in the drop down, and it will show you what version you're using. Mathcad 13.0 or later is recommended, and again you can check your version from the help file. If you've correctly installed your Mathcad and Pro Engineer and your licensing is correct, you should be able to see Mathcad analysis under external analysis on the analysis tab on the menu bar, which I've shown a small example of how it shows up in your Pro Engineer. This is from Pro Engineer, so when you go into Pro Engineer you should see Mathcad analysis if licensing and installation is correct. This shows basic Mathcad analysis window. We define the worksheet. So what you can do is you can bring up an existing worksheet which says load file, or you can create a new file after finishing your ProE drawing. We need to define inputs. Inputs are defined such that they go from Pro Engineer to Mathcad. So you're mapping your input variables from your drawing in Pro Engineer to your calculation worksheet in Mathcad. After that, you define outputs. In this example, we will be calculating volume. So I have defined volume as an output variable, length, height, and width being input variables. We hit the compute button to show results, which is shown in the results dialog box there. You can either save your analysis or you can add it as a feature to your Pro Engineer drawing, which both of these are optional. Next, we go into mapping the input variables. As I said, they go from Pro Engineer to Mathcad. So you need to tag every input variable as ProE to MC. The math region must contain the definition symbol, the colon. The example is x colon equals 5 meters. Incorrect examples are shown below. This basically means that you need to have one value on your left hand, which is the variable, and one value on your right hand, which is the variable's parameter, or I mean if you say x equals 4 meters. So without the definition symbol, this cannot be tagged as ProE to Mathcad. You need to make sure all your input variables which you want to be selectable in the Pro Engineer software, they have to be tagged as ProE to MC. The output variables need to be tagged as Mathcad to ProE, meaning we're going to take the volume which is calculated in the Mathcad worksheet and pull it back into Pro Engineer. So again, some incorrect examples. The last point is very important because it says that Mathcad returns the results as a feature level parameter into ProE. So I'm going to be showing you a little more example of that during the demonstration. But this is the same thing. It says it has to have just one value on the left and one on the right, but instead of the semicolon, it needs only the equal to sign. So the equal sign should be there for tagging them as output variables. These are some guidelines so that your input and output variables are pulled back to and from Pro Engineer and Mathcad correctly. The ones which are allowed are alphanumerics, literal subscripts, underscores, Mathcad units, and 32 characters or less. The ones which are not allowed are obvious ones actually. Greek letters such as alpha, beta, pi. If you want to use pi in your calculations, you have to spell it out as pi instead of using the symbol for pi, because it will not be called back into ProEngineer and you will not be able to compute your results. Special characters such as the pound sign, the asterisk, matrix or vector elements are not pulled back. Superscripts and also any variable name more than 32 characters will not be sent back to ProEngineer for integration. Mathcad configuration options. This is basically when you're pulling your Mathcad analysis load sheet up. This is of how it will get pulled up from when you click on the external analysis, Mathcad analysis. You can either specify the file path or the directory for the for where you store your Mathcad files. If not, then ProEngineer searches in this order. It will first look in your PDM workspace if you have a linked session. It will then look in your directory specified by the Mathcad analysis configuration option. It looks then in the current working directory, and lastly it looks in your ProEngineer startup directory. There's another option in Mathcad which is the auto mapping option. When Mathcad variables and parameters in ProEngineer have the same name, if you click on the auto mapping option, which is set to no by default, you will have values returned automatically. I can show that to you during the demonstration. So this is the end of the presentation. So if anyone has any questions, because I'm going to go into the demonstration after this. Any questions, anyone? I am going to take that as a no, and I'm moving on to the demonstration section of this quick bite session. So I have a block which I have already drawn out in ProEngineer. So this is a rectangular block. Before I start, I'm just going to show you the dimensions. It has 20 length, 15 height, and 10 depth. One thing I forgot to mention was when you are trying to integrate from Mathcad to ProEngineer, it is very important that your units remain the same. So if you choose to use millimeters as a unit in your Mathcad calculations, or if you start with your drawing and you say ProEngineer should be in, let's say MKS. If it's an MKS system, it's meter, Newton, second. So you have to make sure that your length, height, and width are the same units in both Mathcad and ProE, or you will face a few errors and your computation will be completely wrong. So I've just showed you the dimensions. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to click on the analysis, external analysis, and Mathcad analysis to bring up the Mathcad analysis worksheet. I'm just going to pull this in the side so that we can see the drawing as well as the analysis sheet. Since I have already created the Mathcad analysis worksheet, I'm going to load from file. They have extensions that are XMCD. So this is block volume XMCD. This is my Mathcad analysis folder. It pulled up from here since I have already set working directory as Mathcad underscore analysis. So I'm going to open this worksheet. What we're going to do is we are going to map the dimensions from the drawing back to the Mathcad software. So I'm going to click on the length. Actually, I can show this a little better. I'm just going to switch dimensions. I'm going to go to the info and switch dimensions. What happens here is it brings up length, height, and width